AM 650 KGAB, Cheyenne's #1 news talk radio station. And I have with me on this segment James Johnson, candidate for mayor of Cheyenne. But you're not here specifically so much talking about your campaign today as a petition you've been circulating. Is that right?
That's correct.
Tell us about the petition.
Well, the petition is basically holding Mayor Orr and her staff accountable for malfeasance with the pothole bid contract. Malfeasance defined as basically inappropriately using your office for personal gain or for the gain of a particular individual. And so the way that this contract was structured and the way it was pushed through, there was two bidders that submitted a bid out of three people, companies, and one of the bidders was allowed to go below the $250K mark that the city was looking for, while the other bidder was not allowed that same opportunity before the contract was finalized.
So you're saying there wasn't a level playing field here?
Exactly, yes.
Go ahead.
And so basically, if my contention is that the city staff acted inappropriately in regards to the statute. The statute's 15-1-113J. And the statute basically says that you can't favor one contractor over another in the bidding process. And so, like I said before, they allowed Simon Contractors. I'm not necessarily picking on Simon Contractors in this. They're kind of like third party this whole thing. But they allowed Simon Contractors to go below $250K, whereas they didn't give Knife River that same opportunity. And if the city had followed a more fair process, they would have said, hey, we're only looking to spend $250K. Can you guys go below that? And ask both of them the same thing. Mm-hmm. And say if Knife River said, no, we can't do it, then okay, fine, you go with Simon Contractors because they're the last bid that's still standing. But it doesn't seem like they were given that opportunity before a contract was finalized by the procurement department. And so that's kind of where I'm sitting at with this is before a contract was done, they allowed Simon to go below that threshold, didn't give the same opportunity to Knife River, and so because of that, that's malfeasance. They basically favored one contractor over another in this bidding process instead of giving them both the same opportunity.
Now, how would that be for personal gain for the mayor, though?
Not necessarily for personal gain for the mayor. I mean, the malfeasance statute is basically defined as, in this particular sense, defined as favoring one person, one entity over another entity, basically helping them, aiding them to go below, to secure a lower price, lower bid than all the other available contractors.
Was anybody else told they could go below $250K? Or
as near as I could tell by the memo written by the procurement manager, the time frame, the timeline, as near as I could put it together, was that before a contract was finalized, he reached out to Simon Contractors and said, hey, can you guys go below 250? And then Simon Contractors, of course, came back with their below 250 bid. And so the timeline is the contract wasn't finalized at that point. They didn't say, all right, Simon, you're the lower bidder of the two, so we're going to go with you, but we want you guys to go below 250. The bidding process was still open at that point, as near as I can tell, just by reading the memo that was attached to it. And so my contention again is before the bidding process was complete, before the contract process was complete, both of them should have been allowed the opportunity to get below 250. And if the contract had been finalized and they said, okay, we're going to go with Simon Contractors and you're the ones we want to go with, can you go below 250? That would have been fine. But because the bidding process was still open, that's what I'm worried about.
Why, if we know, would Simon Contractors get a more favorable set of circumstances for bidding on this contract? I mean, why would that happen?
Well, because they were the initial lower bidder. I think it was something along the lines of, I want to say Knife River, don't quote me on these numbers because I'm just kind of going from memory. I think Knife River had like $700,000 bid, and I think Simon Contractors had like $400,000 bid.
So quite a difference.
A pretty big difference. And then they went out and reached to Simon Contractors and said, can you go below 250? And that's when they did that process. Now, looking at the bids, though, after the fact that were made available by the council's clerk, we would have got more bang for our buck with Knife River. That's why it would have been nice if we could have asked Knife River to go below the 250 because they had less overhead. They had less, like for example, I remember Simon Contractors had some sort of expenditure on their list of $30K for signage and blockage, basically like road cones and whatnot.
Right.
Whereas Knife River did not have that kind of exorbitant expense for road cones and signage and things like that. And so I contend that we would have got more bang for our buck with Knife River if they were going to be able to go below that 250. And that's why you would have want council in that process to kind of ask those questions, which they did at the council meeting when this was being discussed. Those are the kind of questions that you would have wanted to have them ask beforehand, before it even got to that point. But unfortunately, the mayor decided to call this an emergency procurement, and we all know how that went back in September. And that was kind of a way to do an end run around council and to cut them out of the process as far as approving these contracts, since it was over 35K. And it just seems like a total lack of accountability. I would like to see the council kind of push harder on holding the mayor accountable in this kind of situation. That's why I circulated the petition, presented it to them to investigate, and instead they seem to pass it off to the city attorney. And the city attorney is basically, as far as I know, saying that it's not a contract. They're still kind of holding to this emergency procurement idea, and that even if it was a contract, it was done properly. Basically, a lot of legalese to kind of like get their way out of worming their way out of holding this whole process accountable is kind of what it seems like to me.
And I do have a copy of the city attorney's opinion on this. When we post this online, which I expect we will do sometime in the next week, we'll also post the city attorney opinion. And I don't want to read through the whole thing, but I will read Section J. The statute alleged to have been violated, WS 15-1-113J, reads as follows. Any officer or employee of the city, town, or joint powers board who adds any bidder or respondent in securing a contract to furnish labor, material, or supplies at a higher or lower bid than proposed by any other bidder or respondent. Basically what he's saying here, because won't put everybody to sleep by reading through the whole thing, that you can't favor somebody.
Yeah, that's what the statute says.
That's what the statute says.
Yeah.
But he says the allegation summarized is that the city purchasing officer violated this statute. He says no contract was ever entered into, so in fact it's invalid.
And that goes back to the emergency procurement thing, that it's not a contract, it was an emergency procurement.
He also says the purchasing manager does not enter into contracts, only the relevant city departments do. So basically he's saying this doesn't apply to that law.
And it doesn't matter who had the role in entering in the statute into such a contract, because the point of the statute says that whoever committed malfeasance should be held accountable by the council. And so it doesn't matter if it was supposed to be the engineering department, doesn't matter if it was supposed to be the procurement department, doesn't matter if it was supposed to be the mayor's office. Ultimately, it comes up to the mayor because she's the one in charge of the city. Someone told the procurement manager to favor Simon over Knife River. And whoever that someone was, I'm pretty sure it probably wasn't the procurement manager. It was probably somebody above him or somebody in a different department. So whoever that was, they're the ones who committed malfeasance. And that's why I wanted the council to investigate and figure out, okay, well, who made that order? Who said, ask Simon to go below 250? And then maybe questions came up, well, what about Knife River? And whoever that someone is says, don't worry about Knife River. They're the higher bidder. We're just focused on Simon Contractors.
So essentially you're saying this was a fixed process.
It seems to be. Yeah. And so it's just a matter of, I want the process to be fair. I mean, if we're going to be spending $250,000 on this process, it should be open, it should be transparent, it should be fair. We should be getting the best bang for our buck. And maybe it was Simon, maybe it was Knife River, but the council was kind of cut out of that process initially to be able to vet both contractors and say, okay, well, what are we getting with Simon? What are we getting with Knife River? And going from that route and saying, okay, well, what's going to be the best use of our tax money? Instead, it was just solely through the mayor's office, solely through the procurement manager's office, whoever had the final authority on approving this quote unquote emergency procurement, since they contend it's not a contract, but whoever had the final approval authority on this, it seemed to be that it was just strictly up to them as far as what contractor we were going to go with. And that doesn't necessarily mean that there was any sort of corruption or anything going on, but it is still malfeasance as defined by the statute because one bidder was favored over another in the bidding process.
Now, James, some people might say, okay, that's kind of inside baseball. All I care about is we get the potholes fixed.
Agreed.
And that the lower bidder, they got the bid, so let's go to it. Why should we care about this?
Well, we should care because are we getting the best bang for our buck? And so, like I said before, when the bids were revealed and council did finally have the chance to talk about them openly in the public meeting, the questions did come up. Why is Simon charging this much for this much for that? They might be the lower bidder, but we're getting less bang for our buck. And so, I mean, if you did the math, I don't have the math in front of me right now. I didn't do the math in my head. But, say, for example, Simon was able to get to the $249,999 and Knife River was able to get to that same amount proportionally. So let's say that we had maybe, $250 going to, out of every $1,000 going to the potholes with Simon, but we were able to get like $300 or $400 out of every $1,000 spent out of Knife River, for example. Like I said, those aren't the actual numbers, but what I'm saying is proportionally, which one has given us the best bang for our buck? And it could have been Knife River. We just won't ever know because they were never allowed to go below the 250 amount.
Okay, in case you're just joining us, I'm speaking with Cheyenne Mayoral candidate James Johnson. He's speaking about a petition he's been circulating to, I guess, hold the mayor accountable for the pothole bidding process or the pothole bidding process. That would be correct. Whether a contract was awarded or not, it was still a bidding process.
Exactly, yep.
So, and you feel the city council kind of maybe fudged a little bit on some of their responsibilities here?
I do, and it kind of comes down to what their city attorney has told them in this process. I mean, it's bigger than just this contract, but the city attorney has, as far as I could tell, talking to several council members over the last couple of weeks, has basically told them that they have no authority over approving contracts. Mm-hmm. And basically every expenditure by the city is defined as a contract under this broad definition. And the statutes say differently. The statutes say that city council does have the authority to approve and review the expenditures that come up before them. And likewise, logically, they have the ability to disprove them and disallow those expenditures as well.
So it's largely a debate about executive power versus the legislative branch, so to speak.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, think about it at the national level. The national level Congress is the one that pays the bills. The president is the one that sets the budget, for example. It's the same thing at the city level. At the city level, the city council is the one that pays the bills, and the mayor is the one that basically spends the money. And so there's got to be that give and take. There's got to be, okay, well, the mayor is going to spend X amount of dollars on this, this, and this. The city council has to have the ability to review it, to approve it, or to deny it. And if they don't have that ability, there's really no point to having a city council other than expenditures over $35K, because statutorily they seem to still have that authority. Although, will the mayor just start calling everything over $35K an emergency procurement? That way she can do the end run around council on all these other expenditures too. Don't really know for sure, but I mean, she's already kind of set the precedent with this pothole contract that if the city council is unwilling to push back on it, why shouldn't the mayor just consider everything that she's spending, everything below $35K she's got total authority over, and the council can't say anything about it. Everything over $35K, just call it an emergency procurement, and the council has nothing to say about it.
So basically, she could just spend money however she pleases, and nobody would say anything. And is the scenario you're
is the scenario that I'm describing? Yeah, and that's why I want the council to push back on her. But I'm also trying to encourage citizens to get involved. There's the council meeting coming up this Thursday, 6 o'clock at City Hall, Thursday the 19th. I kind of want to try to get a good amount of people showing up there to kind of make their voices known as well. Hold the mayor accountable, spend our money wisely, do what needs to be done for accountability. That's kind of what I'm pushing.
Okay, and we do need to go to a commercial break, by the way, if you have any questions or comments on this issue for James Johnson. Okay, again, I'm speaking with Cheyenne Mayoral candidate James Johnson. He's speaking about an accountability petition that I guess you've already presented to the council. You're hoping they take it up Thursday night. Is that right?
Well, most likely they'll take it up Thursday night. I mean, based on what was revealed by the city attorney opinion letter, it seems like the way the council is probably going to go right now is they're just going to go ahead and dismiss it with prejudice, which, if you're not familiar with legal terms,
can't be brought back.
And it just seems to me like the council is, I don't necessarily want to badmouth the council, because I do want to eventually work with them as the mayor, but I do want them to stand up to the mayor. Whether it's me, whether it's some other candidate next year, or whether it's Mayor Oregon, they need to assert their authority, their statutory authority, over this mayor and over the taxpayer funds process. And it just seems like they've basically went with what their city attorney has said, and their city attorney has told them that they have no role in the process. And to me, that just seems like that conflicts with what the statute says. I mean, there's the statute 15.1.125A, which basically talks about the expense approval process for every city and every town in Wyoming, and it says that the council has the authority over that process. And instead, like I said before, every council member that I've talked to in the last couple of weeks, they've said that the city attorney has told them that they don't have that role. They don't have that authority, that everything is a contract, and as everything is a contract, then the mayor is the only authority over those expenditures. And it just seems to me like it's ripe for corruption at that point, ripe for malfeasance in the definition of, now you are spending money to benefit particular people. For example, there was the flowers, the $18,000 contract for the flowers downtown that a lot of people know about, and it's been revealed in the newspapers. It's been talked about on KGAB. It's been talked about across the board on Facebook or whatnot. And the DDA spent their own money and their own volunteers to put flowers downtown. And then the mayor decides that she wants to spend $18,000 on a contract that appears to have benefited a friend of her husband. Mm-hmm. And they ripped up the flowers that the DDA put in and put in these other flowers, which by all accounts, people said looked worse than what the DDA did. And this is the kind of thing that's going on, and that's why the council has to assert their authority and assert their dominance over the taxpayer funds process, this expenditure approval process, and hold her accountable, because she's not the one that's allowed to spend the money. They have the role in assuring that the money that's spent is spent appropriately. And if they're not willing to do that, I don't know. We need to get some people in there that are willing to hold that role.
Excuse me. Now, there's been a lot of conversation in recent months about the Bloomberg Award the city got. $100,000. I think $56,000 of it already has gone back. Mm-hmm. $23,000 of that, I guess, spent inappropriately. $33,000 roughly was never spent. Mm-hmm. Was what you're talking about? Was this a factor in that situation?
Well, it all kind of ties together. So, I mean, the $23,000 that was spent inappropriately, some of it was still quote-unquote city expenditures, so things like the holiday decorations or the holiday parties or the retirement party or whatever the case might be. But some of it was inappropriate to the benefit of her spouse, for example. And so she paid back $700, basically by all intents and purposes, accepting culpability in that case. She paid back $700 that she agrees was inappropriately spent, in this case on, I believe it was a ticket for a husband to travel with her. And you know, that's not the role of our taxpayer funds, to be able to have your spouse go with you to Mexico or to Hawaii. And in fact, why are we sending the mayor of Cheyenne to Mexico or Hawaii anyway? I mean, I know they say that in Hawaii we have the submarine that's named after the town. Okay. It just still seems like an inappropriate expense, because that money could be better spent here locally.
Her argument is she's representing the city.
Yeah. And same thing with Mexico too. I mean, my argument is she's making a national name for herself because she wants to get higher office. And a lot of people see that for what it is. But I just want the council to look at these things and to hold her accountable, because that's our money. That's our taxpayer funds. And like I said before, it doesn't matter who's the mayor next year or the year after that, I guess I should say, since they take office in 2021. But the council needs to hold them accountable and make sure that the taxpayer funds are being spent appropriately. And it's just not happening right now. I mean, they're making the right words. They're making the right statements. And I do like Rocky as far as what he's doing to hold her accountable. Rocky Case, yep. But I'm just not seeing the actions. I'm seeing the words, not seeing the actions. And maybe there's a lot going on behind the scenes that none of us are seeing. That's entirely possible. But until I see some actual actions going on and some actual accountability being done, and that's what the purpose of this petition was to be able to give the council the opportunity to actually hold her accountable. Mm-hmm. And the city council, despite what they say as far as not having any ability over holding her criminally accountable, they are the only ones that have that authority. I mean, me as an average Joe citizen, I can't go and make a report to the Division of Criminal Investigations, for example, and say, hey, we need our mayor investigated because of malfeasance. I can't really make that request, but the city council can. The city council, that's why I gave them this petition to investigate it. And if they did find that malfeasance did occur, as per the statute, they could have made a criminal referral to DCI, and DCI could have taken on the investigation and ideally passed it on to our district attorney to prosecute at some later point. And that's kind of what I was trying to hope for, so we can actually have some real accountability. But instead, what they seem to be holding on to is, there's an election next year, you can hold her accountable that way. Well, okay, you can hold her accountable politically, but not criminally. So if she is misappropriating our money, if she is spending it for personal gain or for the gain of her friends and family and things like that, then we can't hold her accountable. She will never be held accountable for that. So however much money she's misspent, the city will never get back. And it just seems like sort of a Pontius Pilate moment. I'm washing my hands of it. You guys deal with it. You guys can vote her out next year if you really feel that strongly about her malfeasance. And like I said, it's just, okay, we vote her out, but then what? She's scot-free and will never be held criminally accountable for anything that she's done. Anything that I contend that she's done. I mean, that's why I want these investigations to go through to determine what has been misspent and ultimately to hold her accountable for what has been misspent. Now,
correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like you're saying this is kind of a test case for a bigger issue.
Well, it is the first step to holding her criminally accountable, ultimately, yes.
But beyond just the pothole money.
But beyond just the pothole money, because I'm trying to encourage the council to, like I said before, assert their authority. They do have the ability to hold her criminally liable. They have that ability that we citizens don't. And I just want them to assert that authority. And maybe they agree that she hasn't misspent money. I beg to differ based on statements they've made in the media and what they've told to me privately or what they've mentioned to people on Facebook, because they all seem to agree, not all of them, but a good majority of them seem to agree that there's fishiness going on.
A consensus.
Yeah. But yet they're unwilling to push the issue is what it seems to be. And that's kind of where I find my disconnect with the process.
Okay. James, does that pretty much cover what you had this morning, or did you have more?
That was about it, yeah.
Okay. We do have time for a quick call if anybody has any questions or comments. I do expect that we'll be posting this on our website probably sometime next week. We'll also be posting the Attorney General's, or not the Attorney General, City Attorney's opinion, so people can see both sides of the issue. Any last thoughts for our listeners this morning about this issue in general, the city overall, or anything else?
Well, again, I just want to encourage people that are listening to this, grab a friend, grab your family members, come to the City Council meeting next Thursday, 6 p.m. at City Hall. Make your voice known. Try to encourage the City Council to hold her accountable. If you really feel like she's misspending your tax money, this is the time to push it.
And you think she is?
I believe she is.
Now, is this personal between you and her?
No. Every time I met her, she's been nothing but kind and friendly to me. I will admit that. She's been respectful and kind and all this sort of thing. But you know what? If you're misspending money, that's the whole reason why I got in this race. She's not following statutes. She's misspending the money. And I wouldn't be in this race if that wasn't the case, for example. But, she could be as nice as can be. She could be as nice as the, little school teacher next door. But if she's misspending the money and she's breaking the law, she's breaking the statutes, she needs to be held accountable.
Have you directed any of these concerns to the mayor's office?
I've talked to her personally as far as the last city, she had those little town hall meetings.
Right.
And she had the last one there at the
Kick Rocks tour.
Yep, the Kick Rocks tour. She had the last one there at the police station. I did bring up some of these issues with her then, especially about the vouchers thing. And like I said, at that point, and Jeff White was there that day. It just seems like, again, I'm just repeating myself here, but it just seems like the city attorney has got the council convinced that they have no authority over holding her accountable.
And you think that's incorrect?
I do think that's incorrect.
Okay. And again, we've been speaking with Cheyenne mayoral candidate James Johnson. We're about ready to go into a news and information break here at the bottom of the hour. Then we'll be back on the other side for the last 25 minutes of our program. James, I guess you're done for today?
Yes, sir.
And we'll be posting this online at some point next week so people can hear it again if they didn't get to hear it all. Read the the city attorney's opinion and I guess form their own conclusions. You're asking people to show up Thursday night for the council meeting, though.
Yes.